Hello and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we are here to talk publishing, marketing, and the business of being an author. Today, we have questions coming in live at newshelves.com/FAF. You can join us if you'd like. We also do take in emailed questions by emailing info at newshelves with an S.com. And we answer those live and put our replays up on YouTube. So there are multiple ways to join us. We hope that you do. And thank you for those that are live. Our first question is coming from Beth. And Beth's question is, what is the best way to track book sales to see if your PR efforts are effective? And that is a great question. And Beth, the answer will kind of depend on how you published. So either in the Q&A or in the chat box, just let me know, did you self-publish? Are you with a publisher? Because it does slightly change your access. As we know, when you self-publish, you are the publisher, so you get real-time results, or at least much quicker results on your sales. And okay, so Beth is with a hybrid publisher, She Writes Press, which is a very well-known, respected hybrid press. So in the case of working with a hybrid press or a traditional publisher, it makes it a little bit more difficult because most of the time, if you're working with a publisher, then you are getting sales reports or royalty reports from them, but you don't get them by the day. You may get them once monthly, and if so, that's a lot from a publisher. That's actually, you're doing really good. More often than not, though, you'll either be getting a quarterly, a twice yearly, or a once yearly report, which means it's really hard to track your sales efforts and your PR efforts to know if what you're doing is working. So there are a couple of things that you can do to see if your efforts are working that kind of give you maybe not exact sales numbers, but it gives you a meter to see if what you're doing is working. So number one, looking at your sales ranking on Amazon. So Amazon is not the end all be all, right? Like we know you can sell direct to bookstores, Barnes and Noble online, and different places like that. But Amazon is where the lion's share of books are purchased. Somewhere around the range of 65% for print books and 91% for ebooks. So watching your Amazon ranking can be a good way to kind of get a feel to see how, like, if your book is currently selling. So for example, if you do a big PR effort and you do it on December 1st, watching your Amazon ranking for the next week or two and seeing if it kind of climbs or not can be a good indicator of whether or not what you're doing is working. And keep in mind that those Amazon sales ranking, there is both the overall ranking, which tells you how you're ranking overall in Kindle or overall in print books. And then there are category rankings. Now, category rankings are fantastic. It's great to go high in your category ranking. That tricks the algorithms. I'm sorry, trips, not trips. Trips, not tricks. I can learn how to speak words. But it can trip those algorithms to actually show your book more, to give you more love on Amazon. However, what I want you to look at is the overall ranking. And the reason for that is because that will give you a better idea of how your efforts are moving the needle. So looking at your ranking directly on Amazon is one way. The other way that you can look and see if things are working or not is through Amazon Author Central. So every author who has a book that is for sale on Amazon can go to authorcentral.com and they can claim a free author page through Amazon. Highly recommend you do this if you haven't. It's free. Great SEO. It's one more spot for you to kind of promote yourself and your books, and Amazon kind of hosts it. So lots of great features on there, but the ones that I want to talk about are the reports and marketing features. So when you have an Author Central account, there's a tab called Reports and Marketing. And when you're on the Reports and Marketing tab, there's an option to track your ranking. So you can check your ranking for your Kindle books, for your paperback. Yeah, I believe even your hardcovers are on there. So you can track your ranking. Doesn't matter if you self-published or if you're with a publisher or multiple publishers. All of your books go into one account under your author profile on Amazon. So that's a really nice feature. It also gives you sales reports. Now, these sales reports are helpful, but limited. So here's the thing. The sales reports come from Circana. So used to be BookScan, now it's Circana. Essentially, this company tracks approximately 85% of print book sales within the US. So that can be a way to kind of track your book sales, but only within the US and only print book sales. So if your publisher, it maybe doesn't give you reports as often, Circana will report, and you can buy a subscription and pay for it. Amazon does that for authors, so you can get just your book sales because a subscription is not cheap. But so you have access, and then you can look at your book sales and see how the print book is selling. Now, it does not give you access to ebook sales, which is kind of a bummer. Same thing for audiobook sales. That doesn't count. But print book sales, and it's not just print book sales from Amazon, it's print book sales from everyone who reports to Circana, which again is estimated about 85% of US sales. So that's happy, or that's a good thing to use as well. That's something that can help you kind of dial in and see if what you're doing is working. I did this promo in October. Let me look back on those sales. Did it tell me anything? Did it not tell me anything? Again, these things are limited, which can be frustrating, but they are helpful. So between your publisher reports, your ranking, and the Circana or the sales tab, marketing and sales tab on Author Central, you can kind of build a picture to get an idea of what you're doing and is it moving the needle. There are some other things that you may also be looking for. It reminds me kind of when people talk about losing weight and they're like, they're non-scale victories. Well, these are non-sale victories. Things like, are you getting more reviews on your books? Because we know that typically you have to have more sales to get more reviews. So are you getting more reviews on your books? Are you having more people join you on your social media platforms or visitors to your website? Because those are also things. If you have a website, you should be able to see how many visitors you have. So for example, I recently was working on a PR campaign with an author. And one of the things we looked at was not only the sales numbers and the ranking, but we also looked at the website visitors, the increase of social media presence. And we were able to see that because all of these platforms do have reports, especially for business accounts. If you've got a business page on Facebook, Instagram, that kind of thing, then you can get all of this information. So when you're doing a PR campaign, sometimes we're just looking at sales, but sometimes we're also looking at overall lift. Did you get new followers? Do you have more people on your website? Do you have more people signing up for your email newsletter? Do you have more reviews coming on? So depending on what kind of campaign it is, those are also things that you can look at. And those are also victories that, those are great things. That's what you want as an author. So that's what I'd be looking at for anyone on the call who is a self-published author, meaning that you have taken it upon yourself to publish your book through KDP, Ingram Spark, Draft to Digital. You can, of course, look at your sales reports every day, and typically those get updated daily. So you can be looking at those. Now, do keep in mind, depending on the type of the promotion. So if I'm doing Amazon ads, for example, I would expect to see a response pretty much right away. Like if I'm doing an Amazon ad this week, I would expect to see some movement or some data this week. But if I'm doing something that's got more of a long-term effect, let's say libraries, bookstores, a lot of times that process takes much longer. So for example, when we work with books and we pitch them out to libraries, we can see an immediate response, but more often than not, we don't see that full range of response until we look back 3 months later, because that is sometimes how long the process takes. If you're working with PR and pitching to podcast, sometimes you get a response right away. Sometimes you get a response weeks later. So it just kind of depends in setting your expectation that way. But I will say for self-published authors, because you have the control of knowing your numbers right away, it does make it easier to adjust your ads, to adjust your PR and marketing based on the numbers. Now, I do warn authors who have that access from knee-jerk responses. It didn't work today. Today I'm losing money, so I'm going to change everything. And what that sometimes happens is that sometimes reporting is delayed or we respond too quickly. So that's kind of the flip side of it. There are pros and cons to most things, including you know, how much data or how little data you have access to. But as long as we're aware of it and you're using it wisely, I think is what it's all about, is tempering your responses, using it wisely. Half of my job, and I've said this before, half of my job is talking authors down. I had an author, I was part of 5 book launches at the end of October and the beginning of November. There were 5. It was a lot. It was not planned that way, but then because of delays and things, it ended up with 5 book launches. And anyway, so this is a different author than I was speaking of before, but we launched the book. It actually did so well. It hit every marker that we had hoped for, but then reviews start to come in and it's like, oh, well, I got one bad review. This is terrible. Or I'm not getting enough reviews. And sometimes it's simply, as I said, my job is halfway just being a bit of a publishing therapist and talking people off that ledge. Like, nope, things take time. This is a process. You just have to trust the process. And I know that can be frustrating, but those are the things that we kind of have to think about. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that was helpful. And I'm glad to see Grishma is also with She Writes Press. All right. Another thing that's kind of come up more recently with ads and things like that is changes over on Facebook. Facebook is kind of changing up their ad platform, which you may or may not have seen already. So I don't think it's anything huge that's coming up, but if you go into the ad platform and it's a little bit different, they had been doing the pages where your business account was converted to like almost a new profile, still connected to your profile, but then it was a business page. So they had been converting those over slowly, and I believe they're finalizing all of those. So some people I know who are still on the old page have been converted, and it also converts all your ads to your Meta account rather than a Facebook account. So it looks a little bit different. I have seen some weird reporting going on, which is typical. Anytime any of these platforms, Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, have new updates, it's not unusual to see some weird things like weird reporting or glitches in the system kind of happening as those changes take place. So if you, for example, a bunch of people started getting emails from Facebook saying your ad has ended, and people are like, I haven't ran an ad with Facebook in weeks, months. I had no less than 10 emails about this where people are like, I haven't been running something. Did they turn my ads on? Are they charging me? No, that's not what happened. What happened is that this change caused a glitch where they were sending out emails for ads that had completed months, some years ago. So you should always check. If you get those emails, number one, be careful of spam. Go directly to your Facebook account, log in, go to your advertising account, and just check and see if anything's running that should not be. That glitch happens every once in a while too. But this big thing that just came in where people were getting emails, it was just old emails resending. So always check, make sure if you don't intend to run ads and they're still running. But it's just kind of something that happens, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. As far as book sales going into the holiday season, you all know that about 40% of book sales happen around the winter holidays. So starting in November, December, and the beginning of January is 40% of all book sales. We have been seeing that already. And I will say that if you have books that are a good fit for the holiday season, either because they're giftable or they're holiday themed, now is your last chance to run ads. Typically for kind of those giftable items or holiday themed gifts, we run ads until maybe December 24th. But keep in mind that if your book, like you have a children's book that has to be shipped, typically people are going to stop ordering those books about a week before Christmas because they won't make it in time to wrap and put under the tree. I have also noticed with Amazon a lot of delayed shipping. So if you if you're looking for books to order for yourself, or if people are ordering your books, just know that even though we've all come to rely on Prime and that next day delivery or quick delivery, a lot of those, at least where I live, I've noticed a lot of delays happening. So just be aware of that as we go into the holiday season. News last week, I think we talked about how Spotify has now rolled out their premium subscription, now offers audiobook listening hours. So it's 15 hours for premium subscription users, and it's offering those audiobooks. It's somewhere upward of 200,000 is what Spotify reported. So upwards of 200,000 books. You can listen up to 15 hours. And according to Jane Friedman, who released her hot sheet last week, reports seem to say, they seem to, but reports seem to say that the publishers and authors who are in that subscription service are actually getting paid much like the outright book sale would be. So it seems like Spotify, I mean, it's a little early to say, we don't have full reports, but it seems like Spotify is really trying to offer new services to the listener and draw in audiobook listeners to to their listeners, their music and their podcasts and stuff into audiobooks. But it seems like they are in the process treating publishers and authors pretty fairly, which I like to see. I know that was a big thing. Um, Obviously, audiobooks are one of those things. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy that if you're not exclusive with Amazon, you get 25% royalty. Whereas on ebooks, like even if you're non-exclusive with Amazon, if you have an ebook priced over $2.99, you get a 70% royalty. 70%. But for audiobooks, you're getting a 25% if you're not exclusive with Amazon. And if you are exclusive with Amazon, you still only get a 40% royalty, which is crazy. Audiobooks are one of the lowest royalty shares for publishers and authors. Now, traditional publishers can broker better deals, but for anyone using ACX, Findaway Voices, an aggregator like that, royalties are much lower. So it's kind of crazy to me. And Brandon Sanderson had kind of pushed on that I think it was last year. I don't think it was the beginning of this year. I think it was last year. He'd really pushed on that and the fact that like it was just crazy. And so he had brokered some deals for himself with Spotify. But part of what he did was saying he would move his books over to Spotify and kind of even give them some exclusive rights if they also gave better deals to indie publishers who were putting their books up on Spotify. And so, of course, we don't know all the behind the scenes and the numbers, but it seems like that actually made a difference. So it's always good to see when someone or something in the community really uses their weight and their fame to support other authors. We don't always see that, and I love to celebrate it when we do because I think it's a big deal and it's really awesome. So that's kind of audiobook news. Of course, there's still no updates on the AI narration for audiobooks that's happening over on KDP. Although just recently there was the 50 books to 20 books to 50K. The last conference happened, and one of the big hot topics was AI. And it seems like most authors are actually open to the idea of AI narration for audiobooks. Some staunchly are against it, but it seems like many are open to it. So I know with the audiobook producers I work with, a lot of the voice actors are actually now through SAG AFTRA, which is the union for actors and voice actors. They are now really pushing for signed agreements that their voices cannot be used in machine learning. So not only from the publisher side when they're putting a book up on Findaway Voices or Apple, whatever it is, but the voice artists are actually putting it in their contracts with the publishers now. So I think that'll be interesting to see. Now, that's not to say there's already a lot of learning that's been done, but it's very interesting to see. AI updates, of course, there's still a ton of lawsuits. We're going to see this for months, years to come. But we're still seeing a lot of lawsuits. There's a big lawsuit against Facebook and Meta that's kind of hung up right now. These things are gonna be in the news and happening for a really long time. So I don't think that there's much to say other than that they're still going on, they're unresolved. The other big kind of news that's been going around this fall has been the banned books, and especially the laws in Texas. Texas and Florida have been the big ones that have really been talking about banned books and rules and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that is still in the court system as well. So it's a weird time with publishing where so much is in the court system right now and no quick answers kind of coming up. Last year, everyone was kind of following um, the sale that was going on and Monopoly. And now we're seeing different lawsuits, but I am kind of amazed how publicly and how much interest is being taken in lawsuits that are happening in the publishing industry. Not that they haven't been there before, but they seem to really be taking shape in the forefront. Of course, I think we've talked about how Amazon has filed several lawsuits against people that were impersonating them as publishing companies. We actually had one of our own almost fell for one of these companies where it was like KDP Publishing, and that is what they were calling their company, not KDP, which is the legitimate publishing platform for Amazon at kdp.com, but KDP Publishing. And they presented themselves as KDP, as Amazon, but they were the service arm. And so there have been multiple companies like that. And what we're seeing is that Amazon has taken note. They've had enough complaints. It was sullying Amazon's name and KDP's name. They were getting a lot of bad reviews and flack and all of that. And so they actually started to push back on that, which has been interesting. Other news as far as our bestseller list, we know USA Today bestseller list is back, but maybe not exactly as it was before. The WSJ, the journal, has now closed their bestseller list, which is a little sad, but we have just learned that Bookstat is partnering with Jane Friedman to do a bestseller list, and that actually accounts for book sales accounted for online. So this is actually online sales, ebook sales, which is quite interesting. It's different than what's been used in the past. So I'm interested to see how that develops. I think the numbers just came out for October, and that's free on Jane Friedman's Hot Sheet website, the bestseller list. I should pull it up for you guys, but I'm interested to see how that turns out. One of the things that they're doing that's different than we have seen with other bestseller lists is that they're actually highlighting indie books. They're highlighting books that were not with big publishers. So I thought that was quite interesting. In comparison to some of the other bestseller lists like New York Times, they're not. It used to be that an indie could get on the New York Times or a self-published author could get on the New York Times, but that's just not the case anymore. And it's one of those things that is just it's one of those things that's so curated that, it's not something that's really accessible. So for anyone who's joining us online on Zoom, I'm dropping a link in the chat box that is to the bestseller list through the Hot Sheet Pub, which is Jane Friedman's newsletter. So I love Jane Friedman's newsletter. I'm not getting paid for this, but absolutely love her newsletter. Highly recommend it. It's one I subscribe to. It is a paid newsletter. But the Hot Sheet bestseller list, as they're calling it, which is now coming out, is not, it's free. It's free to all. So it's not something you have to pay for, which we all appreciate. So I do think that's fun because it's another way to, it's another opportunity for authors to shine. It's another goal for them to reach. I think that bestseller feels good and people do use it as validation. It does in some cases help sales or helps convince people to stock your book in libraries or bookstores, that kind of thing. So I think it's just something that is another opportunity for authors to reach for, and hopefully it works out really well. I'll be following that and certainly keep up with any updates that we may have. I think that's most of the news happening as far as I know in the industry. You guys can always drop in questions if you have them, but it's not unusual for the publishing industry, even though sales increase during the holidays, the publishing industry as a whole kind of stops over the winter holidays. I was just talking to an agent the other day, and we were talking about how it's almost inappropriate for us to email our publishing industry contacts starting, around the 10th or 15th of December until the week after January. The publishing industry is go, go, go and works almost nonstop. But for whatever reason, around the Christmas holiday or the winter holiday seems when everyone kind of takes a break. So it's not unusual for the news to slow down simply because other than book sales, it kind of just happens. Yeah, Eileen's saying her publisher is closed from December 4th until after the holidays. That is not unusual, especially outside of the US. Many of my contractors, people I work with for book covers and design and other things like that, many of them will shut down for 3 or 4 weeks over the holiday. New shelves, actually, we typically kind of don't do anything. I do Free Advice Friday, but we don't do um, projects. We're for the most part shut down between Christmas and New Year, which is, a week. We've done that for years and years. So sometimes our news slows down a little bit, but that doesn't mean marketing necessarily does. It doesn't mean that book sales slow down, but it does mean that the industry as a whole does, which again, kind of interesting little quirks. Yeah, so what data does Jane Friedman use for her bestseller list? So essentially what it is Bookstat is a paid reporting platform. It's kind of like Circana that I mentioned earlier. So Circana really tracks print book sales, and it tracks store sales is one of their main things, is they are actually tracking like in-person store sales. They track print book sales. So Bookstat, on the other hand, does track print sales, but what they really track is they track a lot of online sales. So it's slightly different, and a lot of indie authors and self-publishers, or I mean, honestly, most books are bought directly online. And so that's why it's interesting and that's why it's different. The link that I dropped does have all of that information on there, but that's the gist of it, is that it's mostly online sales. And so you have to pay for a subscription to actually track all the book sales, where you can look up any ISBN or any book and get numbers. But the bestseller list, which just curates the top 50 in several categories, is not something you have to pay for. That's something that Jane Friedman is doing, and it's not paid. It is open to the public, which is awesome. I have been hearing a lot about people from Amazon ads. As I mentioned, 'tis the season to market books and to sell books. And I have been getting a lot of questions about, hey, my Amazon ads are doing weird things. My reports aren't matching up to what it says I sold my Amazon ad dashboard. My ads are spending way more money. This is just normal every single holiday season. Every year I run into this is sometimes our reports go wonky, and that's Amazon from time to time. The reports on Amazon ad dashboard are helpful, but they are not always completely accurate. They don't paint a full picture, which we've talked about before. But more than that, ad spend going up over the holidays is very normal. Keep in mind that while you are advertising books, and that's what your focus is, advertising overall goes up. in so many different areas. And so when people are using the ad dashboard, they're using Amazon ads more, there's just more people trying to tie into things. If you are tying into Superman for a kid's book and someone else is doing it for a t-shirt, well, they probably make more on their t-shirt, number one. But also it means a lot more people advertising, a lot of publishers up their spend. So not just smaller publishers, but the big publishers do use Amazon ads. And those big publishers know that the bulk of book sales are bought in November, December, and January. And so they up their ad spend as well, which can up your ad spend. So it can be a difficult time of the year for ads in the sense that you want to run them because you know that running ads helps you get seen, and getting seen is how we sell books. But you also have to balance that with your realistic budget and your conversion and just make sure it's worth it for you. But that's not, no one's doing anything wrong. I've gotten that question a lot. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just kind of normal for this time of year. All right. Let's see. I wrote and illustrated a children's book. I do not know anything about publishing. I did the book on my computer. I did get the book copyrighted. What are the first steps in getting a book published? First off, Cheryl, congratulations. You have done something that relatively few people of the population do. You have written a book, so congratulations. As far as publishing, the first step I always say, or I always ask authors, is what's your goal in publishing this book? Do you hope to get an agent and pitch to a publisher, or are you going to self-publish? And I am a fan of there's no wrong way to publish. Publish, just publish. And there's no wrong way to publish. It's making sure that you're aware of the publishing options and also knowing what each option means. So if you want to be traditionally published, if you want a publisher to publish your book, that typically means finding an agent. So some publishers will take direct submissions from authors where you can submit directly to a publisher. And if they like the book, they'll make you a contract deal. However, that's mostly small publishers, and not all publishers do this. So there's not as many opportunities there for authors without an agent, which means most authors first have to pitch an agent and get an agent to take them on before they go to publishers. And so that process looks like looking up agents who work within the genre that you wrote, and then finding out, are they accepting books right now? Are they accepting pitches from authors right now? And then you have to pitch them. You essentially have to sell them on your book and working with you as a client. It is not unusual. You're going to get a lot of no's. It's just most people will anyway. It's not unusual for people to pitch 100 to 200 agents before finding one, and some people just never find the right fit. So that's not to discourage you, just to say that it is an effort. A lot of people who are looking for an agent, it will take them anywhere from 6 months to a year to find the right agent. And then once that happens, the agent essentially says, yeah, I believe in you and your work. I believe I have the right contacts to connect your work with the right publisher, so I can essentially sell this and get a deal. An agent does not get paid up front. They get nothing from you. What they do is they become your agent. And when they sell your book to a publisher, when they sell the rights to a publisher, they get a percentage of whatever you get. Typically, that's 15%. So they get paid when you get paid, which is why they are so, I don't want to say picky, but selective. They're so selective about what they take on, because if they don't have the contacts, let's say, someone specializes in rom-com and not children's book, and they're just not a good fit, they're not going to have the connections to sell your children's book. And then neither they or you will make money, and they'll be working for free for a really long time, and everyone will be frustrated. So that is kind of the thing, is first you have to pitch agents. You have to find one that's a good fit, that's willing to take you on, if you can do that. Now, let's say 6 months in, you find an agent, it's a perfect fit, you guys are a go. That agent may then request changes to your manuscript, or they may ask that you work with an editor, and then they are going to pitch the book to publishers, and that could take a very small time. It could be pitched to a publisher and someone snaps it up, or it could again take months or even years to get that book sold, just depending on the marketplace. So then after that, you've found an agent, your agent has found you a publisher, you've gotten a publishing deal. To get that book to market, you're probably still looking at 18 months would actually be pretty soon or short. More likely, you are looking at 2 to 2.5 years from the time your publisher signs a contract with you and that book actually launching and publishing. So that means that if you would like to go the traditional route, now these are just, I would call them average numbers. Certainly some things move faster, but not typically. So the average numbers, if you finish a book and you could start querying an agent today, then you are probably looking at your book being published in 4 to 5 years. Now that agent typically works with you with other books too. So if you have other books in the future, they would work with those, but it can be a long time. So when I work with authors who are like, I wrote it, okay, how do I publish this? I like to explain this because there are benefits to being traditionally published. Number one, you're actually doing less of the publishing work. You're writing, you're not learning how to be a publisher as well. And for some authors, that's a better fit. Also, when you have a publisher, they typically will do some marketing. Now, I will say it's limited. It's not saying you don't have to do marketing, but they will do some. And if it's a larger publisher, they will probably have better distribution options, which means your book is available in more marketplaces, which makes it easier to sell because it's available with the right terms to more places. So you can have overall better sales, but keep in mind that you are getting a smaller percentage of each sale. So break down these numbers. This is fun. If you, I'm going to use easy numbers. You guys know me in math, so forgive me if I get this wrong, but if you, as an author, get a publishing deal, okay, so you get a publishing deal and your advance is $100. Now, typically, most advances, if you get an advance, many of the times they'll start around $1,000. Sometimes they go up to, several hundred thousand, even in the millions. But most of them start, especially for a new author for a children's book, you're probably looking around $1,000. But we're going to use 100 because, again, my math skills. So if you get a agent who then sells the book to a publisher, $100 advance, and then let's just say that your royalty after you earn out that advance. So once you have earned enough to pay that advance back to the publisher, then your royalty on your book, let's say, is 10%, which is actually high. You're probably looking more around the 7% range. But again, I like easy numbers. So let's just go with this. So you get $100 for selling your manuscript. Fantastic. Your agent gets $15 of that. So you actually get $85. But you have to earn back the whole $100. So when the publisher starts selling the book, if you have a 10% royalty, you don't actually see anything of that until you sell enough to earn back, which 10% on a $10 book, let's say that you are getting $1. You're getting $1 per every book that sells. So you have to sell 100 books to earn your advance back. Then once you sell enough to earn your advance back, your publisher will start paying you your royalties, which in this case, this scenario, is $1 per book. So then you get $1 per book, but 15 cents of that goes to your agent because they get their 15% cut. So you are earning lower. And again, these numbers, I made them super simple for my poor math-addled brain, but these numbers are actually higher than you would typically see. The average author, once they, you have your advance, which again can range, but once you're actually getting royalties per book sale, the average traditionally published author is going to make somewhere between 70 and 90 cents per copy sold. So when we think, oh, they sold 1 million copies, they must be a millionaire. No, probably not, because they then have to pay out to their agent and they're only earning less than $1 per copy sold. And that's after they paid out their advance. So it's actually, even if you're traditionally published, you're getting paid smaller amounts per book. It's less work though, and wider distribution. So looking at those numbers, that's the traditionally published route. And there, again, pros and cons. For some people, though, that's their dream. That's what they want, or that's their goal. They don't want to do the work. They just want to write and to sell the manuscript, and then they want to do some marketing with their publisher. And that is fine. If that is what your goal is, your first steps then, to go back to the question, your first step is to then go start finding agents that you think would be a good fit for you and your book. If, however, you decide, I don't have that long to wait, or I don't want to wait, that doesn't fit my plans, whatever it may be, then you can self-publish. And you can either self-publish by working with a hybrid publisher, in which case you share the cost of production. So you're actually going to pay part of the production cost to get your book made. You're going to pay for the cover and the design, and you're going to pay for that. And then what happens is the publisher then on their end, they're doing the work. So you're paying for the cost of production. The publisher is using their expertise and their knowledge to get the work done. And then they essentially are your publisher, and they pay you royalties once the book starts to sell. So you're paying upfront cost, but then typically royalty shares with a hybrid publisher are higher. Many times royalty share with a hybrid publisher, because you fronted the production cost, are going to be 35 to 50% per book sold. So you earn back at a higher rate, but you have to put more money up front. And the publisher then is earning royalty on the book because, hey, they put their expertise and their time into getting the book to market. So that's hybrid publishing. Now, there are also what we would call vanity press. And let's keep in mind that a good hybrid publisher is partnering with you. A vanity press is someone that typically is out to take money from you. So they will charge you a large amount to do the things a hybrid publisher would do. But whereas a hybrid publisher is partnering with you because they earn money when your book earns money, and they are really supporting you, a vanity press essentially does the least amount of work possible to get a book up on KDP, let's say, and they charge you a large amount of money, and then they don't really do much. They earned their money off of you. They don't really care if your book sells. And many times the product is subpar. And we want to stay away from those, we want to stay away from those people, those vanity presses. And if you're wondering, what companies are in that sphere, a really great resource is Writer Beware. Writer Beware really is a watchdog that watches for a lot of these companies. You can also go to IBPA, Ally. There's a lot of resources to kind of make sure that you're not getting in bed with those types of people. And the third option is true self-publishing, which means you are the publisher. You take all the financial risk, you are fronting the money for production, but also you're the publisher and you earn full royalties. So in this scenario, you are either doing all the work yourself, you are creating your cover, you are doing your own marketing, or you are paying different people, different contractors to do the work for you, but you're acting as the publisher. So whereas with a hybrid publisher, you're paying them and they're doing the work, but then you're splitting royalties. If you self-publish, you're either doing the work yourself or paying for the work still, but then you own everything that you create and you earn full royalties on your book once it's published. So every sale, whatever's earned, that goes back to you. Now, self-publishing, one of the things, this big misconception in self-publishing is that it means doing it alone. And that's not true. Now, some people they will format their own book. They will do their own cover. They will do their own marketing, and they'll do it all on their own. But many, many people will get a cover designer to create their cover, but they will manage that project as the publisher. They're going to pay for their cover design. People will either do their own interior design with something like Atticus or Vellum, or they're going to pay a designer to do that. Marketing, they're going to do it themselves, or they're going to pay someone like me in New Shelves to either strategize and give them a plan or do a marketing program for them. So again, self-publishing, you're taking on those costs, but it's your project. You are the boss. You're the one investing the money in it, but you're also getting it back. So that means that if you sell a book, for example, remember the royalty rates I was talking about with a traditional publisher where you're maybe getting what was it? I think I said 10 cents per book once the book sells. Well, if you sell a book direct on, let's say, KDP, if you sell a book directly on KDP in paperback, you can earn, depending on the type of book, but you can earn anywhere between $3 and $7 per copy sold. And that goes directly back to you. Now, of course, now you have to see, does that actually pay you back for the money that you put into it? And that can be hard. I will be very honest. It can be hard to break even when you're self-publishing. And it's really hard if you've got just one book. And that is why a lot of self-publishers will either have that book be part of a bigger business plan if they're nonfiction. So they're building on that for other ventures. They've got a course they're selling that ties into the book. It's part of how they get clients or different things like that. So that investment, they're looking at how it brings them income overall, not just on the book. Or authors who self-publish really have to have a big backlist. So then your marketing and all of your efforts go to marketing one book, but then you're earning on an entire string of books. And that is when self-publishing can become profitable. That's when you hear about self-publishers who are earning six figures a year, who are, who are really doing this full time. Most of them, in most cases, they are writing quite a bit. They are paying out for different aspects, but they are earning more on each book sale, and they've got a big backlist, or they're writing prolifically, and that is how they make a substantial income as an author. And then they do what traditionally published authors do as well. So traditionally published authors, many of them, they will make money on book to film adaptations. They'll make money on those. They will make money on speaking engagements. They will make money on events, and self-published authors can do that as well. So then that is how you can make money that way. So Cheryl, you thought you asked a simple question, and here I've gone on for 15 minutes about your options. So I think the first choice to answer your question, your first choice when you're thinking about, I wrote a book, now how do I publish it? Your first choice is to look at your options for publishing and decide which one works best for you and which one you want to pursue. Now, I have some clients and I work with some authors who, originally they wanted traditional publishing and they pitched an agent. They said, I'm going to pitch agents for a year. And if I don't get an agent, then I'll self-publish. Because originally they wanted that traditional publishing experience. And then, if it didn't work out, they've done other things. I have some people who just say, let's just self-publish. I've got the funds, I've got the time, I can make this happen. But the first step is decide which option better fits your goals, and then research the heck out of it. There are so many resources for that. If you want to work with agents, then there are resources for that. If you want to self-publish, there are a lot of resources for that. New Shelves works with a lot of authors who want to self-publish, or even we work with a lot of authors against a range, but our self-published authors, one of the things that we do is we create a strategy, a checklist, and a plan of how do you do that? What steps do you need to take? And let's look at your timeline. But the first step, my friend, is to figure out your goals and which publishing model you would like to pursue, because the advice for next steps is really based on that first question. So, and if you come up with that answer and you would like to know more, just email me, just email Keri, Keri, at newshelves.com, and I can certainly give you some information and next steps based on that goal. Let me see. I think we've got time for one last question that Alexandra had put out here. Do you have any caveats or best practices about submitting for paid reviews from Kirkus and Publishers Weekly, etc.? Yes, when paying for a review. So if you're paying for a professional review, number one, look for the reputable, well-known companies. Do not go pay, $100 for someone to give you a blog review. Look at the name. Kirkus is well respected. So if you're going to pay for a review, it's not cheap, but Kirkus is well known and well respected. Publishers Weekly, their indie arm, or the arm where you can pay for a review, is called Book Life. Also well known and well respected. So if you're going to pay for a review, Book Life would be a good option. I would not be going to pay for a review from, some random blog or something you can't find. Look for the names and the companies that are well known. Also, keep in mind, just because you're paying for a review does not mean they'll give you a good review, which is good. We want them to not be biased, and we want them to leave honest reviews and give you honest reviews. But sometimes the feedback can be harsh. So just keep that in mind. I also think it's really important, set a budget for yourself. What can you realistically afford to spend on reviews? Set that budget, because if you go and you pay for 3 or 4 reviews, you can easily be spending $1,000 or more. So, be smart about it. Another thing that you may consider is go for a big review like Book Life or Kirkus, if you're going to pay for a review. Now, of course, I always recommend that you pitch your book for reviews prior to publication so you can submit for free. Now, if you missed that window or you didn't get a review, is when you might consider a paid review. And I would suggest finding one well-known, respected place and pitching, or, if you're going to pay for a review, do that. But then take some of your budget, go over to an award system. I like Book Award Pro. We've had Hannah and Jay Jacobson on Free Advice Friday, and they, run Book Award Pro. But Book Award Pro, you can sign up for a free account, and then they find awards that are a good fit, that they, their algorithms, their AI finds the book awards that are a good fit for your book. I would take some of that money, that budget, submit to a couple awards, because awards, number one, they're helpful because they give you social proof if you win them, but also a lot of awards, you look for them, a lot of them will give you written feedback on your book, and you can use that written feedback in most cases. You can choose to use that as an endorsement or as a review, a blurb for your book. So in that case, you may actually be able to go with, like, say, a Kirkus review, and then spend $200-300 on submitting for awards, and then use the written feedback from the awards as blurbs and reviews in your marketing. So that's kind of a way to share, to use that money across platforms and maybe make it go a little bit further. So that would kind of be what I'd be looking at. All right, you guys, I think we got through all of our questions today. Thank you for joining me. Of course, we'll be back next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, same time, same place. So if you have questions, you can join live and you can ask them at newshelves.com/FAF, or you can email them in advance. If you've got them now or you think of them throughout the week, just email info@newshelves.com. I save them up. I'll answer them next week, and we'll get our replays over up on YouTube. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining me, and have an awesome weekend. Bye, everybody.